What advice would you give to somebody if they were going to do what you did with buying a hotel to start?
I guess my advice would be don't be afraid to fail. I think don't overthink it and just jump in, and then also bring a certain sense of humility to it. Like really don't be afraid to learn and embrace what you don't know.
On today's episode, we're talking with Megan Pflug, a designer and artist who's carved out a creative path that's anything but ordinary. Raised in Missouri with what she calls pioneer skills, Megan studied painting at RISD, then built her career as a prop stylist and interiors expert, working with brands like One Kings Lane and Martha Stewart Living. A few years ago, she and her husband left Brooklyn for the Catskills to breathe new life into a 1962 motor lodge. Now, the Woodhouse Lodge is a modern rustic wedding venue that reflects Megan's make-it-yourself spirit and design eye.
I'm really excited to have Megan on. I've worked with her in the past. She assisted me once on a photo shoot, and she was very talented. And I've been following her on social media, and I followed her sort of story. And I have this fantasy, this secret fantasy. Every time I travel, I'll drive by a motel. And wouldn't it be great to do sort of a Schitt's Creek thing where you could redo the motel and just sort of make it a boutique place? And she's actually done it. And I really admire that.
No, I think it'll be great. It might be good to get the dream and the reality from her, too.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you mentioned that she's had so many skills that she learned from her past jobs that it only enhanced it when it was her place. And I think for a lot of creatives, that's a dream. It's like I make the decisions. It's all mine.
Right.
It's all mine, and whether good or bad, and mistakes or the successes, it's all hers.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about the process. Megan, thanks so much for joining us today. We're really excited to hear your story.
Cool. Glad to be here.
So we wanted to start off because you grew up in Missouri with what you call pioneer skills.
I love that term.
Which is such a fun term, and I feel like we kind of have a sense of what that means, but that DIY spirit, how do you feel like that, what is that, and how do you feel like that's influenced you?
Okay, so pioneer skills to me is sort of about growing up sewing and crafting and just making things. My instinct is always, if I see something I like, how do I make that, not where do I buy it? It's just the way my brain works. But I think I grew up with everybody's mother had a sewing machine. Everybody sewed. It wasn't just a way to save money. It was a hobby. It was just something everybody knew how to do. So I just grew up entrenched in those sort of activities. And then also I just love doing that stuff.
The do-it-yourself, and that's kind of stayed in your design ethos all along?
Yeah. I guess my motto, or sort of when I'm beginning a project, I always think of this quote that is attributed to Mark Twain and Arthur Ashe, so I have no idea.
So similar.
So similar. But it's start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
Oh, I love that.
Nice. It's I think a very sort of sane way to begin a project. And for me, I love the tension of a room or a building or a problem to be solved. And for me, the creativity sort of exists in there. And that really dovetails, I think, into the DIY kind of mentality.
Yeah. And what drew you? You went to art school, to RISD.
Yeah.
What drew you there, and what did you study? How did you know about RISD? And how did you know about art school and that you wanted to do something like that?
Yeah, so remember the days of U.S. News and World Report? They would publish the best art schools. So RISD was number one, and I was I'm going there. And somehow I got in. But when I was coming to RISD, and this kind of dovetails into your question, Marcy, I was really influenced by the Bauhaus.
Yeah.
And this idea of
45-degree angles.
A design collective.
Well, a design collective, but for me it was really about that a fork is as important as the art on the wall, and they can all sort of talk to themselves, and there's not a hierarchy of one thing versus another. It was really just about kind of a love of beauty and design and craft. For me, when I went to RISD, I studied painting, but I was sort of approaching it in a liberal arts kind of way. If I could go back and give myself advice, I would probably study interior design. But in a way, I was thinking these things are all, this way of thinking is all kind of leading up to just a creative life. And So if I understand like the creative process, then I can kind of apply that to like any number of disciplines that I'm interested in. But it turns out I am more interested in sofas than paintings.
Then what goes over there?
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of dovetails into like the logistics and problem solving, that you enjoy that aspect of it too. Do you think that's part of it, is that you like to have the parameters of things to kind of help with that? Whereas like I think art in general, when you start off, it's like kind of your own world with your own parameters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, being tethered to like real life problem solving is where my creativity is alive. There's like nothing more stressful to me than the idea of like being in the studio alone and like a blank canvas. That's just like terrifying.
Me too. I'm polarized by that.
Is it like a practicality to it too? Like you like to have...
I think so. I think so. I want to be able to like sit on the couch or live in the room or
Right.
Well, I met you at Martha.
Yeah.
Right? You helped me with one of my favorite stories. It was a solar, I don't know if you remember, it was a solar room that we did together.
Yes.
I love that story.
Yes.
How long were you there? It was almost full-time freelance, right? In the beginning.
I was kind of like a permalancer.
There's no such thing as full-time freelance.
No. FYI, that's so true.
Yeah.
How long do you think it was?
I was kind of there on and off probably for 10 years.
Wow, okay.
So the beginning of my career, Hannah Millman came to RISD. Was she the director of the craft department? I don't remember what her title was exactly. But she was this force of nature, and I heard that she was coming, and I was like, I have to work for this woman at Martha Stewart Crafts. She gave her talk, and I knew I was going to be first in line to like show her my portfolio. And I made this crazy box that was like flocked and nuts and had all these different like
coming through.
Yeah, all these different like projects inside. And she was like, "Great, come work for us." So I moved to New York City with the promise of freelance at Martha Stewart, as one
From
does.
Hannah.
Yeah. in their 20s. But she's turned out to be like such an important like period of growth for me. Like, so Hannah Millman, wherever you are, probably a couple blocks from here.
Probably
We have a surprise guest for you today. Hannah, come on in.
Hannah, you're a legend. Yeah. So from there, I worked in the craft department, and it was amazing. We made Saturn.
Yes,
For that
I
room,
remember that.
and a record were the rings of Saturn. I mean, so my first job in New York City, I thought was playtime, but like not in an unproductive sort of
Playtime with lots of
petulant
stress
way.
and a lot of like high ideals for what it needed to be when it was done.
I was like, great, this is great. I can do this. I can come in here every day and like.
Well, when
use
I
the X-Acto
worked
knife.
with you, I saw that the aspect of that. You not only were a crafter, but I counted on you because we propped that room too together, and we would go propping, we'd choose the books, everything. So it was you were a little bit hybrid at the time, and I saw that because oftentimes with craft editors they'll come with just their project and they have input on props and things, but I think that you did a little bit of both because I counted on you to do that, to help make bed, all the logistics of all those props in a kid's room. So I kind of saw that early on that you were also a prop stylist.
Well, thank you.
Well, and at Martha, when you do freelance, it's a little bit different. Like, you don't get to own the story necessarily. You're kind of helping with whatever, like helping Mel with the propping, and helping. You're kind of given the assignment, not creating the assignment. And then when you got to go to One Kings Lane, I guess is your first time that you took like a full-time job. Was that your first full-time job?
It was.
And what was the difference for you with that? And the appeal too.
So there I was like older and maybe had more skills under my belt, and the difference, so I entered that company in early days, which is always a fun time to be at a company, and it had a lot of
tech boom.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it had a lot of that like West Coast sort of like tech freedom and backing. Josh and Ethan, the creative directors there, were really pivotal in like allowing me to kind of create my own job description there. So, I ended up there scouting locations and then producing these like small scale makeovers, utilizing the product from One Kings Lane. And it was so much fun. To this day, like, it's still one of my favorite jobs ever.
And you were saying that you were asked, tell us what you want to do, or that opportunity is a turning point for people, to say, oh my God, it's my choice. I can figure out how I want to do this.
Totally. I mean, like, working for you, working for Hannah, working for Josh and Ethan, like, it's those rare moments when someone sees you and your skill set and takes a chance on you and like kind of lets you like, they saw something in me and they kind of knew something about the market and they were like, yeah, this will work. And then, it became a springboard to like, what's next? And I think about that a lot too, now that I have employees. Like, okay, so we try to build jobs around the people who we want to invest in,
like their strengths,
rather than dreaming up the job description and the parameters of that description in advance.
Well, and then especially when it's early days, it also allows you to help them define what it is, which is such a great opportunity and also an experience that you wouldn't get, that you can have on someone else's dime is really helpful.
Yeah.
So you would do makeovers, but you also had to be part of like the video component of it as well. So there was like personality, and was that like your first exposure into kind of a media aspect of it?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was. It was like not something that I thought I'd do, but it just, that was sort of like video was sort of like becoming the way of the future, and these little stories were very popular, and so.
Can you give us like an example of one? Like what was?
Oh gosh,
I think you were working on like a entryway once when I was in the office, and you had your inspiration up, similar to most jobs. You put up all the inspiration, and I remember, and it was a kitchen as well.
Yeah, I did a lot of kitchens. Yeah, actually, I love kitchens. I love kitchens and bathrooms. Let's see. Well, one time for Kirsten Zara, who was an editor there at One Kings Lane, I did her kitchen, and so she had this like small New York kitchen, and we like painted it this like beautiful kind of Farrow and Ball, like light blue color, and we made a mirrored backsplash, but we didn't demo anything. We like brought in some beautiful shelving and really like transformed the space. That was like one of the early ones that was really like, I was like, oh, this could be something.
There's something here.
Yeah. There's something here. This like elevated DIY. It's not like, back in 2010 or 11 or 12.
Yeah, where they would have those shows where you decorated in an hour.
Yeah, DIY was like a dirty word. Yeah. It was like not sophisticated. It was not
cheap.
It was inexpensive. It was, potentially amateurish, you know.
It sounds like you put duct tape on something to hold.
Totally.
Yeah.
So at what point when you're at One Kings Lane, and at what point did you think, I might be able to do this on my own? Or I want to sort of expand this. I mean, the time that how long were you there? About 5 years? 5 years?
Yeah, about 5 years.
Yeah. And then did you have that thought of, I could probably become an interior decorator at this point? Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, it was about growth trajectory. When I was at One Kings Lane, I was like, well, like I'm not like a corporate girly. Like I didn't want to like manage a team of stylists or of buyers. Like wasn't.
And that was part of it.
And that was And so if you stay in the corporate structure, you really are this like manager and like the kind of classic sense. The irony is like I still have had to like learn those skills in order to own my own business, but like somehow it's
on your own terms.
Yeah, sometimes on my own terms, so it's a little easier, more palatable. One Kings Lane was like really generous to me, and that they let me put my own name out there, and
which is a big deal.
Yeah. And Rosie D'Argenzio, who was doing the social there, was also really sweet to me and was like, Megan, you need to have an Instagram account and you need to post these stories on your Instagram account. And so like that was also kind of early days of Instagram. So, through that people would contact me and say like, hey, would you consider doing this? Can I hire you? And so I would do, a project here, a project there, and kind of simultaneously like One Kings Lane, the business structure was changing. It was moving from that like kind of energetic startup with lots of like freedom and energy to like being acquired by Bed Bath & Beyond. So it was just sort of like a nice time.
It's kind of nice too that you didn't set out to start like to hang a whatever it is for us to start a business.
Yeah.
It kind of started, it came to you and you thought it was possible because it came to you.
Yes.
In that way.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of how everything has been in my creative life. And for a lot of creative people, it's not necessarily like a straight line from intern to like CEO. It's sort of like, okay, well, what's next? What makes sense next?
Right.
Which is kind of how we got to the lodge.
Speaking of how
Speaking
you got to
of, this is a fantasy.
I feel like we're skipping over the interior design a little bit, but
Yeah.
like, how many years do you think you did interior design?
Strictly, probably like 3 years.
Okay.
On my own, and then we bought the lodge in May of 2017.
You just decided we're going upstate to just look at property, or because I do this all the time when I'm traveling and I'm driving and I see a motel and I'm like, God, wouldn't it be great to own that and just redo it? My best friend and I always say it every time we drive by one, and that's why I love following your account, because I'm like, oh my God, she did it.
Well, so here was my thinking. So it was kind of like peak brands giving like brand partnership deals were like very easy to come by. The barrier to entry was kind of low.
Right.
And I had like this social capital from like all of this press that I got from doing these projects at One Kings Lane was still, like that momentum was still sort of going. And I thought like, I need to parlay this social media thing into something, into a real asset.
Yeah.
As opposed to putting my eggs were not all in like an influencer basket. That is never how I've identified. But like, I thought like, I need to take this capital and like make it something that like I own instead of depending on Instagram or whatever
Their algorithm
to favor me. Like I want to bring this into like a real world. So I thought like, well, I would like to look for a property where I could channel brand partnerships and, use that resource to like furnish things. So, and I was like, kind of like, oh, maybe I'm like tired of being in the city full time. So we started looking at properties, and at first we were looking at old houses and farmhouses, and like turns out those are expensive. And then when you crunch the numbers in terms of like renting them, it's like, well, I don't just need an expensive like weekend house. I kind of need this to be like more of a business. Like, how do I monetize this? So we were, kind of thinking about like, well, how many people can we sleep in this property? And it just so happens that actually a friend of mine, who also went to RISD, had a house in the town where the lodge is. And we knew that through our real estate agent that the property was like probably kind of for sale, although not officially on the market. So we were not, so our real estate agent like pulled into the lodge, and she's like, this is probably like not what you're looking for, but like I happen to know this guy might want to unload this like this old A-frame lodge. And we were like, great, this is what we want. So we got it for a song. It had no heating system.
Was it in bad shape?
It was in bad shape.
In bad shape.
It was in bad shape. Yes, there was no, like the furnaces had been taken out. The guy that owned it was making some like questionable decisions, and we got to him like right before he kind of started making a ton of questionable decisions to the lodge itself. But we spent about 18 months renovating. We had an amazing contractor whose name I will not say.
I am gatekeeping this.
He knows who he is, and he has more work than he could possibly ever want. So we had an amazing contractor that we worked with, and then we did a lot of stuff ourselves too. And
that learning curve was a lot of YouTube, a lot of just doing it.
Well, it's also nice to have a contractor that's willing to work with you as you want to work on things too.
Yes. Yeah.
You might not want to use that duct tape.
Don't do it like that. Yeah. So we had like a contractor / mentor / friend. So we got super lucky there.
Yeah.
And so we worked on the lodge together.
But the plan, your question is, was there a plan for it, or do you just saw it, you felt right, and you're like, I think we can do this?
No, I mean, the plan was to create a wedding venue.
Okay.
We felt like, we, not knowing much about hospitality before getting into this, we felt like, well, people are always going to get married. When you're doing a wedding venue, you're planning your schedule a year to 2 years in advance. So you kind of like can plan for your expenses, and it's not like owning a restaurant where you're sort of buying food on spec and you don't know how much you're going to sell. And we knew like, well, this like upstate New York is like not a foot traffic area. So we felt like that was like something, like events were something that we could like wrap our head around. It's like, we kind of talked about this before, but it's similar to producing a shoot, like producing a wedding, producing an event. Yeah. And although we require people to have a wedding planner, so we're not actually planning the weddings, you know, we felt like as a business model, that was something we could wrap our head around. So it was supposed to be that from the beginning. Okay. Because of the pandemic, we ended up doing a couple of 2, 3, 4, 5, we're almost 8 years in now. We like a chunk of that time we did kind of do stays in the traditional sense of like Schitt's Creek kind of like lodge. Yeah. And we had you know, a little bit of a little pizza restaurant that we opened during the pandemic. Just because there were no weddings, and there were no weddings, and simultaneously the hotel was completely booked for like months. Back to back to back.
Because people basically isolating.
People were
in their rooms,
fleeing the city. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, booking weddings is a situation that takes, you know, people book a year to 2 years out. So, you know, sort of like turning the ship and pivoting back to fully weddings took a minute, but we're there and we love it.
So your husband is, you're in business with your husband. He's also creative, and he worked for a company, or one of the companies I love that do those amazing hand-painted murals. You have this business together, and so how do you divide who does what, or do you do things together, or do you do separate projects? You know, like interiors is your thing, construction here is my thing, or how does it work? How do you work well together, obviously? We
do work well together. Jay Penry, shout out to Jay Penry, my husband. Jay Penry grew up on Penry Farms in Alabama, kind of near Mobile, so like on the water. And so he grew up in a family business. So it wasn't this like Grapes of Wrath sort of like struggling family farm. It also wasn't like a big factory farm. It was very much a family business. So he kind of like had this sense of like how that works. Like Jay's mom and dad also worked together in kind of a similar way. And I didn't set out to replicate that, but I realized like in some ways we have replicated that. So he has this kind of like in a pretty good intuitive sense of like how to run a business kind of in a very intuitive way.
Right.
Okay.
So I feel like he brings a lot of that to the table. I'm definitely the idea person. He's maybe like slightly more tethered to reality than I am. Like I have like 1,000 ideas, and he's maybe like, well,
he's your reality check.
Yeah, he's the reality check, but he's also creative, and you know, so we do talk a lot about, you know, like, should we landscape this area? How should we landscape? Yeah. You know, that kind of stuff.
And those priorities we were just talking about this earlier, about how once you own a home, your priorities and what you're spending is completely different. It's like, there's no new winter coat this year. I want a doorknob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the biggest part for you guys that you didn't have the experience with was the hospitality piece.
Yeah.
Right? So like, how did you kind of get over that learning curve? Like, or was it just a trial and error? Like, how do you like...
really trial and error. At first, you know, we started small. We didn't do a full like back-to-back kind of like 20 weddings a year calendar. We would do like 6, 10.
Okay.
We worked our way up. And then, you know, we are basically a full service wedding venue. We provide almost everything. We do require that you bring in a planner, but we provide like the food and the tables and the chairs and all that stuff.
Are the rooms designated for they are?
Yeah. So it's like a weekend experience.
You buy the whole...
You check out on Friday, you have a welcome party, you check out on Sunday morning.
And how many people does it accommodate?
34.
34?
Yeah. Okay. 34 if a head is on every pillow.
That's a hospitality term.
Yeah.
So is that mainly like the wedding family and the close party kind of stay with you guys? Is that how it usually works?
So people kind of curate, you know, who they want. The VIPs.
Got it.
Stay there. Yeah.
Were there ever any regrets to it? Like in the very beginning, you're like, oh my God, what have we done?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just, especially, I imagine during a pandemic, because you're just like, it was so unknown about hospitality in general, and that, did you take that time to basically do all your renovations and things that you needed to do while you had the time to do it?
I mean,
or
no,
because of the money?
Full.
So we were open. We had done the renovations that we could, and we were just hosting people for overnight stays. During that period, it was also like very difficult to find staffing. It's another whole other complicated story to talk about staffing in upstate New York, but just in general, people were not working during the pandemic because it wasn't safe. So it was really difficult, and we were doing a lot of the work ourselves, and those years were incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. But I think the interesting thing is, if it had been just hard and just my interior design business where there wasn't like a building tied to it,
right,
I might have been like, oh, well, we're closing. But we owned this physical space, this building. Yeah. All of our eggs were in this basket, and so we just had.
And it was your home at the time.
Yeah,
as well.
We were living there as well. So we just had to make it work, and I feel like that ended up being kind of a gift because it gave us this like tenacity, like it has to work. So it did work.
Yeah.
This is a great moment to take a short break. Mel, did you know you can share our podcast with a friend?
I just learned it.
You just have to look for the 3 dots. Once you're in, whether you're in Apple or Spotify, look for the 3 dots and hit share. And we'd love it if you're enjoying the podcast and you think a friend would enjoy the podcast, it would be great if you could help us grow our audience that way.
Megan, how has your background in interiors sort of affected what you've learned about hospitality and a hotel? I mean, we've all stayed at hotels, and we all critique hotels when we stay in them. There's the basics to a hotel, the towels and the whatever, but it's changed, or from the very beginning, from when you first set up a room.
I think a few things have changed, but honestly, not that much, because setting up a hotel room is a little bit like setting up someone's bedroom. A guest room, or your own bedroom. Yeah. Like the sheets matter, the pillows matter, the lighting matters. Do I need 27 scented candles or like a bunch of lotion in the room? No, I need
shower cap.
No shower cap.
I always stare at the shower cap, and I'm like, who's using shower caps? Yeah,
you need a place to put your luggage. You need a place to charge your phone. You need decent lighting, bright and dim.
Yeah.
And beautiful bedding, and you're pretty much good, and a way to make the room dark. I think the thing that
the dark part is block out.
Yeah.
Is essential for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The older I get, the more I need that.
Yes.
Circadian rhythm.
Yes.
And that's constantly changing and tweaking, as time goes by.
It doesn't change as much as you would think, because people's needs for sleeping, I think, don't change. It's inherently kind of part of the human experience. So that part was not a surprise. I think the emotional labor of hospitality was the part that was truly a surprise.
And what do you mean by that?
So I mean that from the time someone, checks into the lodge until the time they leave, their experience is on our watch. So with a wedding, they're coming and they're, they're for the most part there to have a good time. Yeah. They're buying into the experience.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of anticipating someone's needs, reaching out at the right time, in the right way, with the right language, on the right platform. Are we texting them? Or are we knocking on their door? Or are they coming into the lobby to ask us a question? And where do we have staff? So the intangibles of hospitality, I think, were the biggest learning curve.
Right. Yeah. The things you can't anticipate.
The things you can't
anticipate until you've been in a situation where you see it.
But it's all about anticipating.
Right.
Yeah.
But also not looking like you're trying.
Right.
And
so the respect of seeing that "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging from a doorknob is, I put it on right away. I'm just one person when I'm working and traveling and staying in a hotel, and I don't need it to be kept every day. So I oftentimes just put that "Do Not Disturb" sign, and I just get my own towels when I need them.
You know what? That's actually something interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that, because in the beginning we were well, are we going to make these rooms up every day? we decided, no, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not going to go in unless you ask us to. And that's like part of the communication. But also I think that's something that's changed a little bit. There was like, we were like on the borderline of that being an expectation before the pandemic. And like after the pandemic, I feel like no one ever mentions
like
it.
fold down service.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When was the last time you had fold down service at a hotel? You know, where they actually, you know, they come
Mints
in,
on your pillow.
dim the lights,
Yeah.
they put music on and put chocolate on your pillow.
Yeah. But also like that's not what the Lodge is.
No.
The Lodge is it's not glamping, but it's also you know, because like the bedding is nice and you're sleeping in a real bed and there's air conditioning and heating and like the bugs aren't going to get you. But it's also it's not the Ritz or it's you know
it's not what it's about.
You're in the country.
Like, you're in the country. It's simpler. You're there to kind of like unplug, unwind, celebrate someone's wedding, have a good meal, sit by the fire.
And this kind of might dovetail into what we've just talked about, but we always think like the idealistic idea of like owning a hotel and having this thing and the dream of it and then the reality of it. Like how do you balance that, and like what is some of the dream and what is some of the reality that you feel like is, or do you feel like it's more of the dream?
I mean, I guess it depends on like who you're asking. For me, the dream was the dream was not to own a hotel. The dream was to like find this space, capitalize on a little bit of this like social media, like kind of getting stuff from brands to furnish it and promote it and being able to promote it that way. So to me, the dream was like building a business, and then a hotel wedding venue fit that dream more so than like the other way around.
Got it.
And you just learned that it's really profitable and that we can work towards this and that, you know, we're really good at it.
Well, and like you were saying too, which I think is interesting, is you had to pivot during the pandemic to being a hotel because of circumstances.
Yes.
But that wasn't the goal, and you've now been able to shift back from doing that, and now you are pretty much just a wedding venue, not just, but a wedding venue solely, so that you can focus on that, and that makes it easier to be more creative and to be able to kind of...
Yes, 1,000%, 1,000%. Because the thing, you know, and being able to hire the right staff that can do the emotional labor of that like hospitality work, that's the real key for me, because it's a skill, it's a gift, it's something you're born with. Some people have it, some people don't. Like, and Allison, Mallory, like our amazing staff, like they have it. And I'm happy to let them have it, you know?
Yeah.
And that lets me focus on things like, well, what's the structure that we're going to build next year look like? Or, you know, work with the
creative
contractor.
stuff.
Do the building.
Dreaming on the next bit.
Yeah.
You've mentioned being worried about relying too much on social media. A hotel is about the experience. So once people come, they're like, the word of mouth is probably more valuable than the social media aspect of it. Is like, this is a great place to stay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so could you elaborate more on it?
Yeah, well, I just didn't want to have all my eggs in one basket. I just felt like, you know, at the beginning of the Lodge, you know, like Instagram was like very influential. And I thought like, this is cool and I want to like utilize this, but also like the end game, like I don't want to be an influencer. That looks like not my
hard.
not my bag.
Not what you're about.
I'm like, I want to make the things. Like I just felt like, you know, they don't owe me anything, and why would I like let them dictate the trajectory of my business? Like to me, they're sort of like an intermediary, like a third party that's sort of profiting on the creativity of the users of the platform, and then I don't own it. Like that sucks.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, oh, that seems risky. So yeah, I guess that's it. But on the flip side, like it's here. It's
yeah. But you also have to back it up with a quality place, and not just this sort of immediate Instagrammable thing where there's all those other aspects that, you know, it's worth coming here and it's a really good experience, and that you don't get at, you know, on social media as much. I feel, you know, it's kind of like very instantaneous, you know, without all that. So. Yeah.
And you still take on a couple of design projects a year, interior projects as well. Yeah. I know for a while you were saying the Lodge kind of took over a bit, but like you still want to keep your hand in doing those projects as well. Yeah.
I think this in our 8th year, we've really kind of built enough infrastructure at the Lodge that I'm starting to take on client projects again. So taking on one or two, they're mostly, kind of people that are upstate, which is nice. I'll do like some consulting if you're virtual, if anybody's interested.
I will have all that information.
Check out my website.
But So it kind of, and having the lodge allows me to pick and choose the clients that I think, I'm going to be able to serve. you know?
Yeah.
And are most of the clients, have they experienced the lodge, or they just know of your work?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we talked about this earlier about, when someone works with an interior designer for the first time, they're choosing one because they like their aesthetic.
Yeah.
And, but you also were saying that you have to marry your aesthetic with the person's needs. And I think that's a hard thing to do when someone wants to be bold when you're not normally bold. And in the back of your head, you're saying, well, it's not my place, it's their place. But I can steer them in a way where your aesthetic is influenced by it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think whenever, I'm working with a client, I'm always like most interested in like their story, their needs, who's using the space, how old are they, how long are they going to live in this property, like how is this room used, how tall are they, how short are they, like those things are the most important things, and then it's all coming through a filter of my brain. So like I don't obsess about it looking like my work. Like I think it just
it ends up being a hybrid no matter what, because it's not just you.
Totally. And and they're coming to me anyway, already having seen the lodge or, other projects.
So they know that there's sort of what they're looking at. But it's the same as a client staying at the hotel.
Totally.
You have to sort of anticipate those needs and those sort of
just different needs.
Just different needs.
So one of the last questions we like to ask everybody is the best advice that you've ever received, and then what advice would you give to people?
The best advice I've received is maybe like from the universe or through osmosis based on the people I worked with. But there's the quote, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, is like so liberating to me, so I think that's the best piece of advice.
Have you needle pointed that on a pillow yet?
Yes, in every room.
Yes, upcoming projects for the winter,
What advice would you give to somebody if they were going to do what you did with buying a hotel to start?
I guess my advice would be don't be afraid to fail. I think don't overthink it and just jump in, and then also bring a certain sense of humility to it. Like really don't be afraid to learn and embrace what you don't know.
I think that's great advice. So let's take a quick break and then we'll get back with what's inspiring us this week. So Mel, what's inspiring you this week?
I have an account that is inspiring me.
Instagram?
On Instagram. It's called Eddie,
Not a bank account.
I think you follow him too. Eddie Artist.
Yeah.
He's out of England and he hand paints signage on glass. It's the outlined in black and it's sometimes gold leaf. I really love that look. I've always wanted to do it, and I finally figured out a hack of doing it. And I found a company that I can get like a silk screen, and I do it on the front of the glass, and then I will paint it on the back with a gold paint. And I'm really excited. I just ordered it, and I have to sort of do it. And it's for our building here at 272 East 10th House Studios. So
Stalkers, get ready.
Yeah. And you?
So I also have an Instagram account that I'm interested in. It's called The Natural Plasterer, and it's a UK artisan. They do all sorts of restoration, crown moldings. They do like plaster medallions, and they even do the exteriors of buildings. And I love to watch. I like to watch it for like the infrastructure that they build underneath it. Like sometimes it's like a chicken wire, and sometimes it's fiberglass, and sometimes it's like a plaster gauge mesh. So mesh. So I enjoy kind of looking at that to watch, and I almost feel like when I watch them make it, I feel like I'm making it.
And when you were just telling us earlier that you had made a tabletop, right?
Yeah.
That was out of cement, but that infrastructure of making a form and then having to make it work. I've never done that. I'd really like to try it.
No, it's fun. It's definitely fun. How about you, Megan?
So my inspiration lately is not one Instagram account, but sort of a trend I've seen on Instagram. I guess like in a nutshell is hypertufa. which Marcy, you've
Which
done.
I love.
Yeah, you've done many a project. It's this like making a structure that's like an old feed trough or something into a water feature. So I'm very excited to try that.
So
For people who don't know, hypertufa is a mixture of usually Portland cement, peat, and perlite.
Yes.
And so it's a lighter weight mixture to make, and they make it for garden containers, all sorts of stuff.
Yes.
And we can talk later because I do know they make solar water pumps now. Do
Yes.
you know about this?
I'm aware.
But we can't gatekeep that. We have to maybe...
Love to share. Yeah.
We'll talk later.
Yes. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for doing it.
It's a great story, Megan. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.
I think my favorite line out of Megan's interview was pioneer skills.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of it, but since she actually mentioned it. And it's that kind of thinking, that DIY spirit that she has. And also to take all those skills that she's learned through all her jobs and kind of, it culminates into this thing that you own, you know, a motel that you could actually apply all those things to. And I think it's really valuable, you know.
Well, and I think that Pioneer Skills also has an indicator of a practicality as well. And I think she's got a really nice balance and has struck that balance in her latest venture with adding, applying creativity and practicality and business and bringing them all together to kind of make something that is uniquely theirs and also a profitable business for them.
And that's the key.
And not getting too hung up on the social media of one thing or anything of something else. It's just using those things as tools to kind of evolve this thing that's like a tangible business for themselves, which I think is a great example.
And in the end, as much social media as you used, you can't count on just that because you have a tangible product that you need to work on, of quality of, someone's stay, their experience. And I think that she's done that beautifully.
Yeah. For our listeners, if you would like to learn more about Megan's work and Woodhouse Lodge, be sure to check out the show notes as well as our website, www.alifecreativepod.com. We will have imagery and links to her social media and websites.
Our producer is Chris Kangas. Our theme music was composed by Pierce McIntyre. And a special thanks to all the amazing people at East 10th House Studio.